Welcome to the Shared Practices podcast. We have an extremely special guest and good friend of mine, Dr. Brady Smith. Brady, how's it going?
What's up, dude? Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this wonderful podcast.
I remember we met at Voices of Dentistry like
Way back.
5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And there we were in Phoenix, like with booths right next to each other. And I remember I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth. I was like, man, I don't know if I could ever do a podcast facing patients. And you're like, well, no, that's what I'm doing right now. And I was like, oh crap, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done so many things between podcasting, Halo Dental Network, now dental comedy, like blowing up on social, on Instagram, TikTok, like the amount of things. This is like the sign of a man who's not afraid to try things and do new things, even if it hurts, even if it goes in different directions than you thought it would be. And I really, really respect that, because that is what it takes to learn and grow and become a better version of yourself over the course of a career. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Some things don't work, and I did try a podcast that I wanted patients to be able to benefit from, and I thought that's a great idea. Here's what I've learned. Patients don't like it. They don't. Here's the thing. They don't like, and I see this on my social media all the time now, is that if you put yourself out there as a dentist and you share something like things that annoy you, heaven forbid you're a human being who has annoyances. I did a post a week ago about it annoys me when a patient doesn't sit in the chair.
In the chair. I watched this one. Yeah.
I got raked on TikTok. The Instagram comments weren't that bad. The TikTok comments were like, what an arrogant a-hole dentist. It's not that big of a deal. Just sit in the chair. And I did a second video and I doubled down. I said, no, here's the reason why you want a patient to sit in the chair. If a patient doesn't sit in the chair, now the whole focus is like, why aren't you in the chair? And I said, an exaggerated example would be, let's say you walk into the operatory and the patient's standing on the countertops. That would be odd. And you'd be like, what are you doing up there? And how do I get you in here? Because whatever you programmed or scheduled the appointment for, we're not doing that anymore. We're figuring out, why aren't you in the, like, everything we're doing depends on you being in the, so heaven forbid I tell the world, every single dentist is annoyed by you doing this. And that wouldn't be met with like gratitude. Like, thank you for telling us. But it wasn't. The people freaking hated that, dude. They're like, what about anxiety? And I have problems and I'm so scared and I've been ripped off and the cost and we just don't want to sit in that big, uncomfortable chair. I'm like, I think it's the most comfortable chair on the planet, first of all. But
we spent a lot of money to make those chairs comfortable.
Yeah, people didn't like that, man. And so I should have known that. But people don't like, basically they're saying like, we don't want you to be human. We want you to just do the
You're a medical professional. Just put on the robot face and do your friggin' job.
And they really hated it when I said, no, you're being unprofessional as a patient, sitting in a different chair that is not designed for you. That's unprofessional on you. And people don't like, patients don't have to be professional, which obviously patients have to be professional. We've all removed patients from our office for being unprofessional. There's a professional expectation of the patient as well as the doctor.
But here's the deal. You got people riled up. The algorithm loves that crap.
That's why I made a second video. I'm like, well, this is what they want. I'm going to give them more controversy.
Well,
such a polarizing debate. What chair to sit in the dental office? Right. Crazy.
Well, and I'll warn you up front, like, we've kept Shared Practices clean. We don't have an explicit rating, and I don't even know if our editor can bleep.
Did I say something?
No, you didn't. Oh. But I'm about to talk about your experience with a certain show, Jack A. And so I just up front wanted to be like, okay. But I wanted to ask you, that original patient podcast was the inception of this, like, working with comedians and like laughing gas and interviewing them. Did some of that stem from that original podcast?
Yeah. I always had this idea. I think this idea is probably like 7 or 8 years old, where I wanted to get people on. I wanted to get funny people, comedians, that was my target, on nitrous oxide. And I wanted to interview them. And then I was like, but I think that might be illegal to do that. I don't know. I gotta, so I was like, I gotta look into this. So I hired a legal firm to be like, this is what I want to do. And what we've determined is that as long as the legalities surrounding nitrous oxide are that it must be administered by a professional who's licensed, which is me, and it must be done for a medical procedure. So I was like, what about a dental cleaning? And they're like, that would suffice. And we all do that, right? People get cleanings all the time in their dental office.
Yep.
And they're like, I want nitrous. And you're like, yep, it's $100 or whatever. You charge them the money. They put the nitrous on, they get their teeth cleaned under nitrous. We do that day in, day out. So I was like, as long as they told me, like, as long as you are doing a procedure, you can talk to these people, film it. And they have to, I mean, we have like social media waivers, and there's HIPAA waivers that they need to sign, and that whole thing. But so I kind of dabbled in this, and when I could get someone to come in my chair, I would film it, and like in a very unorganized, kind of super amateur way. But we have rebranded this now, and I am attacking this summer. We got a couple people on our list of booked guests, but we're going to be making something very consistent. And we've rebranded it to call it Laughing My Gas Off. And you should be able to find that this summer. We got some great guests coming on, and we think it's going to be a really big thing. And I've just spent a little bit of money to outfit one of my surgical suites in one of my offices into a production studio. Yeah, it's going to be really fun, and we're calling it Laughing My Gas Off, and it's going to be exciting.
That's incredible. Well, and I'll tell our listeners, because our listeners are like, wait, am I listening to Shared Practices? We're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about.
Sorry about that.
We're gonna talk about your journey in your entrepreneurship with dental practices. We're gonna talk about social media and dentistry, which is very relevant to marketing and patient attraction. And we're also going to talk about charitable dentistry and a purpose-driven practice and what that does for you as a dentist.
Sure.
But all of this is connected. It's this like crazy journey of like, okay, well, let me try this as a podcast. That didn't work.
It didn't work. That's right.
That's fine. But then how did you end up, and we'll get to the entrepreneurship here in a second. How did you end up with, there's some character off of the popular TV show where they do stunts called Jack A. And
I think it sounds worse when you try to censor it.
Yeah, it does. We just need some bleeps in here. Yeah. And some guy, like in one of the stunts, did he get his like teeth knocked out, and found out about it? What happened?
Through the podcast and through some of the charitable ventures I've done, I became friends with Steve-O from that series. Steve-O's one of the main dudes from that series. And we became good friends. And then he was really interested in lots of the charitable stuff that I was doing, and he was been very helpful. And he's sent a lot of friends and family to me since then that we've been able to help out. And then I became friends with Brandon Novak through that. He gave me an introduction to Dr. Drew Pensky, and I've been on his podcast a few times. But it was a really cool collaboration that we did to help out some people in need. And he still is a friend, and we chat a little bit to this day. But Steve-O's a surprisingly philanthropic person. People probably don't know that about him because he's got, he puts bees on his wiener, and you probably don't expect.
This is a line I never thought we'd hear on Shared Practices.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that from a man like him. But he's a great dude.
But all of this ties together, like the charitable dentistry, the comedy, the willingness to connect, all of this.
Yeah, but I wanted my job to be fun. I think I started dentistry not really enjoying dentistry. I think for the first 5 years I hated it. I didn't like it, and so it's all just been like, how can I make this fun for me? And then slowly I started sharing that with other people. And some people like it and some people don't like it. But it's all just been like, how do I get fulfillment for myself out of this job that I really can't go backwards on? You can't not $400,000 in debt and 8 years of my life. I can't be like, oh, I want to do something different now.
I want to be a construction worker.
Yeah, that's a difficult transition to make once I kind of commit to dentistry. So it was more like, how do I make dentistry work for myself? And that's kind of where this all kind of spawned from. This is ideas that come and like, well, what if I did this? What if I do this? What if I stop doing this? What if I start doing this? So I think every dentist has that journey. How do I make this fulfilling, fun, enjoyable for me?
Well, and I think there's especially pre-dental school, during dental school, sometimes early career as people are like learning new procedures. It's like, oh, once I learn implants, my life is going to be so good. Or once I
Right.
learn the X, Y, or Z, once I get into practice ownership. And there's a moment where the shiny wears off. And it's like, this is kind of just hard.
Yeah.
And when you don't have like some future thing, because it was always like, get into dental school, get out of dental school, learn this procedure, get into practice ownership. There's at some point you run out of like, oh, this next thing will make me happy. And then you're like, maybe you're one of the lucky few that just like loves clinical dentistry, loves everything about running a team, and there's nothing that provides burnout or stress for you. But I think for the vast majority of dentists, there's some aspect of doing all of this that grates on you that is just hard. And,
Yeah.
that's just work and job and life, but can you rediscover passion for it? And that's what you've engineered is this unique life and this unique take. But I do want to hear a little bit about your journey from dental school into practice ownership, and it's not a typical one. And so I wanted to hear how that evolved.
Well, and just a quick little point on that. I still am always, I think we're always chasing the grass is always greener somewhere else. I fantasize as being an owner, a multi-practice group practice owner. I fantasize about being an associate. I I pay my associates every month and I give them a check and they don't have to do crap, dude. They just do their dentistry and they just get their check. And I'm like, that must be nice. That must be nice. And so you think ownership is like whatever you think it is, I don't think it is. I think that there's something else. So that's what I've found. Because now as an owner for 15 years, owning my practice and doing payroll and hiring and firing and buying supplies and analyzing my overhead and all this kind of stuff, I'm just like, wouldn't it be nice to just show up, do the dentistry, clinical only. I go home. I don't give a crap what goes on. I don't know what your rent is. I don't know what your overhead cost. I don't know. I just do this much dentistry. I get this much percentage in my paycheck and I go home. That sounds amazing to me all the time. I think about that. Okay. So my journey was I graduated University of Pacific in 2009 and I went straight to purchasing a franchise called Comfort Dental, which is heavily present in Colorado. And they're in some different states now, but their heaviest presence is Colorado. I had some upperclassmen that were doing great with Comfort Dental. And so I felt like that would be a good place for me. So I bought a franchise, which was $575,000. And they finance everything. And they have like a 0% default rate with all their Comfort Dental docs. So they have banks that will just like give me all that money. And it's the easiest thing ever. So financially it was simple and easy. I felt like I was buying a private practice. I felt like I was, and in a way I kind of was. Franchises are weird in dentistry because it's not a DSO, not traditionally anyways. It's a different situation. And it's not like a PDS where you're buying 51% versus 49%. And I owned 100% of my equity in that practice. There are some things I didn't know until later about actual ownership. Like, for example, I couldn't collateralize my equity in my practice to borrow money to buy a house because Comfort Dental wouldn't allow that, right? So
there's rules, and I'm finding this out. My mother-in-law, she has a business here in town that she started a few years ago called Children's Art Classes, and she was one of the original like 4 franchisees. And so they teach art. Both my daughters are in it, and I was like, well, why don't you just do this? And she's like, it's against the rules. So there's rules.
Yeah,
being a franchisee.
And so I found that out because I was trying to buy a house after I bought this practice, and I was making between $30,000 and $40,000 a month right out the gate. And so I thought, money's great. This is awesome. But I had this debt with this that I had to service for the practice, the $575,000. And then I was like, well, now I have this money. Now I want to buy a house. That's the next thing a man would want to do, right? So I want to buy this house. And I had so much trouble. I'd end up doing like a 7-year adjustable rate mortgage because I couldn't get finance, because the biggest asset that I owned, my practice, I could not collateralize, borrow against to borrow. So it was a really terrible situation. It was, for that, I didn't really realize that, like, okay, so if a bank can't take it, then I don't really own it. And so that was a stark realization. But so I worked with, between 2009 and 2014, I worked at this practice in Pueblo, Colorado, and I lived in Colorado Springs. And then I got an opportunity. Some people within Comfort Dental were opening up Washington State, and they knew that I had a draw to the Pacific Northwest. I'm a big fan. And so he said, do you want to kind of take over the Southwest Washington area, Vancouver, Washington? I was like, yeah. So 2014, we set up 2 practices, and one in 2014, one in 2017. And we started Comfort Dental in Washington, and I built those 2 practices from scratch. And I kind of came to the point where I kind of feel like I learned too much. Like, I learned how to do this. I learned how to start a practice from scratch, doing it with Comfort Dental. And then all of a sudden it was like, I don't feel like I need you guys anymore. And then I wanted to expand, but it was very expensive to expand within Comfort Dental. And so in 2020, I had sold my equity in one of the practices that we had created with Comfort Dental. So I only owned one franchise. And I negotiated a deal with Comfort Dental to essentially just say, hey, you can replace me. I'm going to leave, but I'm willing to pay you money to just own the practice outright. So I don't have to move and you don't have to deal. Like, I'll just pay you some money. And they came up with a number that it was agreeable to me. And so I said, yeah, let's do it. So basically just take the Comfort Dental sign off the building, put my sign up there. We call ourselves Tooth Docs is the name we came up with. And, yeah. And so in 2020, we did that. And then I set up 2 more practices in the area under the Tooth Docs name umbrella. And so I have 3 practices, but the one I currently work in used to be Comfort Dental. And so I like to tell people, I decorporatized dentistry. Unprecedented, right?
They don't usually let things go. They scoop them up and then they're like, this is mine. You can't have it.
Yeah, I think it would have been hard to replace me. And then at the time I did, this was sneaky, I opened up another practice up the road. And so we had 2 practices, and one was a non-Comfort Dental practice and one was a Comfort Dental practice, which we were allowed to do. They are super adamant about like not enforcing a non-compete, because they're like, we don't really compete with it. They see themselves, it's kind of an arrogant move, but they don't see themselves as competing with anybody. So they're like, we don't really force a you want to open up next door? Go for it. Try it out.
Wow.
And so I opened up a practice that was 18 miles away. But my intention was, if they play hardball with negotiation, I was going to tank my practice and move everybody up there, because their name's on the master lease. Like they're the ones who pay the rent, and like my name's not on the lease. So, but they didn't play hardball. They played nice ball, and we came to a very agreeable, negotiated term, and
the divorce was good. You had a good divorce, you know? And
yeah.
you
I mean, it's like
out.
it's a $3 million practice, and I didn't want to walk away from it, but I felt like I could have easily started it up and diverted things somewhere else. Right. And I would have been just fine.
Yeah.
So now I have 3 practices, all called Tooth Docs. And then I have a partner who runs one, like physically in the office, and I run the one that's in mine. And then we have one that we just opened up a year ago that is associate run. Yeah.
So my question here, because I think a lot of our listeners will be interested in this. This is very, from what I understand, very non-shared practices style practice is Comfort Dental's model, which is, I've heard that it at least starts hygieneless, like it's doctor-driven hygiene. Does that change at some point if the practice grows enough? Like, talk to us about like the model, because the model is a little different than what we're used to thinking about.
So when I started in 2009, it was a pretty hard rule. Like, I feel like you would have gotten in trouble for hiring a hygienist. But I was just, my goal was to assimilate. I had all these examples of doctors who were doing well within the organization that I'm like, why would I try anything different? And so I didn't even attempt to. I was like, we do our own cleanings? No problem. I'll do my own cleanings. I had no qualms about doing my own cleanings, which a lot of dentists do.
Right.
But
it's a big sticking point.
But I was like, I don't have a problem with that. I don't care. My paycheck's good at the end of the month. That's all I really care about. So I'll clean teeth. And I actually I still to this day, I clean teeth. I don't have a problem with it. But as time went on, it felt like, in 2009, I was still using analog x-rays. We were not digital x-rays even. Like that sounds like, oh, my grandpa used to use like a developer. But
you had the black room and you're dipping stuff.
But that's not my grandpa. That's me. That's me. That's for the first 2 or 3 years of my career was still like developing x-rays and waiting 15 minutes to see my test file PA on my endo, So slowly Comfort Dental started like getting into implants and like when I first started also like no one was doing implants in Comfort Dental. And I was like, I think we should be doing implants. I think that's a lot of money and a lot of a service that people want. So they just slowly started like saying like being more evolving a little bit, but slowly.
Flexible a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit slowly for sure. Where then by the time I left, like for sure, you could hire a hygienist. I don't know a lot of practices that did, but I knew some that would hire hygienists.
Did you guys?
No, I've actually never worked with a hygienist. 15 years still. What? Never worked with a hygienist.
Wait.
It's not because I don't want to. I would love to hire a hygienist right now. I'll hire a hygienist. When I broke away from Comfort Dental and started doing things my own way, it was too difficult to hire a hygienist. I just can't compete with what they're getting paid.
So wait, but you said a $3 million practice, and you only mentioned you as the doctor in that practice.
No, I've had various associates, and now currently I have one partner.
In that practice or in the other practice?
Well, so I tell you,
and if you can't get it, I don't want to like force you to like divulge.
No, I think this is part of the podcast where you guys want to know this. So I have 3 practices and one partner that I own all the practices with. Me and her own everything together. The practice that I work in individually, I only work in one. But the practice I work in, one of my associates wanted to buy in, so he bought a third of the practice from us. But my main partner doesn't actually work in that practice, but she owns a third of it. So in my practice, we have 3 owners, no associates. And then we have, in her practice, she has 1 associate. And I guess I own 50% of that practice and her. Okay. So and her. And then in our third practice, we have 2 associates about to add a third associate.
And then you guys are probably 50-50 owners on that.
We're 50-50 owners on that third one. Yeah.
Cool. How did you guys connect, you and your partner?
She started with Comfort Dental, and she was like with me when we started with Comfort Dental. I think she was a 2017, 2018 grad from Omaha.
Okay. So not like she's like a halfway point in your career, of Comfort Dental experience.
And then as we just worked together every day, it was just kind of like just chatting and just like, man, we should maybe like just like see if we can like buy our own place and like do our own thing. And we were just slowly kind of talking. And she's an amazing dentist, amazing partner. Couldn't ask for a better person to partner with. And I'm very lucky to have her. And so it was just an easy, I think she started as an associate with the intention to partner. And it's the only person that in like 2 months, I was like, I think it was less than that. I think it was 30 days. I was like, if you ever want to partner, just let me know. Like she was so valuable. I was like, you want an associate, fine. But like, if you want to partner, like, I'm happy to like discuss that immediately if you want. And she wanted to discuss that immediately. So she bought in, and then she helps with the transition from Comfort Dental to not Comfort Dental. And Yeah. Yeah. Comfort Dental is kind of a train wreck, man. Honestly, there's a lot of good things I like about it, but it was kind of just the leadership was kind of just all over the place. And I think they could have been a Heartland or Aspen style size, but they had leadership that was just hard to get past. There's really abrasive personalities, super abrasive personality, good ideas, just delivered terribly.
No, that's really cool. And it's good context for our listeners of like, okay, this is an option. This is a franchise, hygieneless. And I bet a lot of the comfort practices, especially these days with the cost of hygiene, still start hygieneless. And it's like at some point you can hire a hygienist, but it sounds like that they've been doing things like that for a long time. So if a new doctor was interested in a franchise model with comfort, that probably, is that accurate to say that would be the expectation?
I think so. I mean, I'm 3 or 4 years removed. I don't even have
That's true.
the company email. I got booted off the company email and everything, so I don't know exactly what they're doing. But I can tell you that this: when COVID hit, I think I probably got 100 messages from 100 different dentists easily about how I do hygienistless practice, because they're all losing. I mean, the hygienists didn't come back. They left and then they didn't come back. And that was like an epidemic in and of itself for dentistry of like, where are the hygienists at now? And so dentists were kind of like, either they don't offer hygiene or they do it themselves. And so I got desperate messages from dentists that were like, I don't know. I mean, a lot of dentists have like 30% of their income is the hygiene portion of their practice or more.
So let's talk about it. Let's because that, I mean, obviously this is something that I'm all about, having as many tools in the tool belt as possible. And I think sometimes we get stuck in this like, oh, this is how it has to be. And so then we only see certain options. And I've talked to some dentists recently who were like trying to grow, trying to get to that second doctor, and they realized they kind of hated it. And, you know, they weren't working with one of our coaches. They didn't have experience in that transition from 1 to 2 doctors, but they made the decision, you know what, I'm going back to just me. I'm going fee for service. I'm going to cut things out. But having this as like a realistic, profitable tool to say, yeah, I can do this. And if all my hygienists quit, you know what, I actually can run this. So tell us a little bit about, what does that look like? Like, you know, is it just, you know, you combine hygiene with operative when there's new
it's like, all I guess just sprinkled in my schedule. Like, I mean, for the most part, we utilize dental assistants to the maximum ability that is legally allowed, and that's different from state to state. So in Washington State, they can coronally polish. They cannot scale subgingival or supergingival. So no scaling at all. I think there are states that are starting to allow for that, which is upsetting to a lot of hygienists, understandably.
Which in Indiana, we've got FDAs, and it's a fairly wild, wild west of FDAs. Like someone can walk off the street, like they were a barista, and they can get on the job training, and we can turn them into an FDA without.
And they're placing fillings.
They're placing fillings.
Yeah. So that was the same situation in Colorado. Washington's a little different. Washington does require a certificate, an educational thing.
And I think there's still like x-rays. To be able to take x-rays, they have to, you know, jump through those hoops and stuff like that. But I mean, I've seen those assistants scale flash off of a filling that has been placed.
Dude, we had high school grads placing fillings. At Comfort, when I first started, we had high school. I was just like, this is how it's done, I guess. I don't know. You start off, and I'm like, I don't know. This is what everyone's doing.
I guess I didn't have to go to dental school. I could have just walked off the street.
Dude, I had one partner that would allow. So the idea, the mentality was whatever's reversible, whatever's revert. You can if they place the filling bad, you could drill it out, right? So he took that to another level. And was allowing assistants to obturate endo. So like if he had like a number 8, like an easy number 8, it was like he set it out and got it all cleaned up, and he'd remove, he would allow the assistants to put the thermofill into the canal set at the exact, 18 millimeters, set there,
Right.
put it in there. And I didn't know if that was legit or not. And
Right.
how do I know as a dentist if that's, who do I call? Where's the Bible? I don't know
Right.
who to look up or what, but I quickly was like, that doesn't feel right to me.
If the apex is a little open and they just press a little too hard and all of that gutta percha goes out the same thing, sodium hypochlorite, a little bit of gutta percha might not be reversible out the apex.
So I did not follow in his example on that, but it is, like you said, it's the Wild West, man. It's like, how far do you take it to interpret reversible means? And I don't even know, there is not a good, my whole thing, like standard of care, I don't even know what that means. What does the standard of care mean? You got holistic dentists that are pulling out asymptomatic teeth that have been root canaled. Any tooth that's been root canaled, asymptomatic, they're pulling them. And they're all over the United States, vocal on Instagram, social media, vocally doing that. Nothing, no consequences. Just pulling teeth out because they've been root canaled. Right. And that's the only reason. They're digging out old extraction sites to fix cavitations, whatever the hell that is. And you're talking to me about the standard of care? Like, I don't know what that means, man.
Yeah, no. And it's as a dentist, whatever I'm going to do in my office and whatever my assistants are going to do, I just want to hold it to a high standard. So it's like, in my opinion, whatever my state will allow me to do and that I'm willing to put my name behind and sign off on those charts, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. And at this point, many of the EFTAs I've worked with inside of my practice, in the military, they placed better fillings than any of the dentists in the practice because that's all they did all day long. They had loops. They were, all of those things. So I'm a big fan of understanding clearly the legalities of what can be done and what can be delegated and maximizing those opportunities, appropriately training, appropriately checking. All of that is huge. But I want to go back. I want to go back to, what does your schedule look like? How often? What's the recare cycle? Yeah. So how long do prophies take? Like how much, if someone's got a prophy, they've got the coronal polish. Yeah. When does the assistant say?
If you imagine me in an operatory with the prophy paste and a polishing wheel, that's not what I'm doing. I don't do that ever. That's not, if you think, do my own hygiene, that's what that means for you. Probably not. You probably live in a state that allows dental assistants to coronally polish. But what I'm doing is probably takes about the same amount of time as any other dentist's hygiene check. Let's say 5 minutes. If it's a prophy and they're a healthy individual and we're doing a simple prophy, in that situation, I am taking an explorer through everything, maybe spot probing a couple of spots, evaluating x-rays, looking for any pathology like you normally would do. If there is any light scaling, I do that. I have scalers with me so I can kind of scale as I go around every little area of the mouth. And I don't know, that takes me 5 minutes. And then I hand it over to my assistant to finish the coronal polish, which takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I don't know, something like that.
Right.
So on a prophy, I don't feel like I take any more time than you would on a hygiene check. I think I'm doing the whole thing at the same time. I'm doing that simultaneously. What takes up my time is scaling and root planing. Big scaling and root planing cases, that takes up that takes up a lot of time for sure. Less time than you probably think, but it does. That is all me. Any kind of scaling above or below the gum line, whenever that's needed, removal of tartar, calculus, debris, stain, anything like that, that is all me.
With that, do you ever combine scaling and root planing with restorative? Like if you're going to do a quad of restorative, you're getting them numb.
Whenever
you do the restorative, everything's like sealed off and done, and then you go to town and SRP, and that actually seems like it might even be a more productive appointment anyway.
Yeah, one of my favorites is all 4 wisdom teeth and scaling and 4 quad scaling and root planing. So if I'm doing all 4 wisdom teeth, I'm getting 4 blocks in each corner of their mouth, and they need scaling and root planing. I'll knock that all out in one visit. Now I'm doing 4 quad scaling and root planing and 4 wisdom teeth. That's a very productive appointment for me. And I can do that quick because they're all numbed up and I can get in there quick. And I don't want to share exactly how fast it is because people get upset with me. I can just tell you this. You get faster at the things you do every day. You're faster.
Yes.
If I told you it takes an hour to do a crown prep, you would probably look at me like I'm an insane person.
You're a dental student at that point.
Right. If you told me, I don't know, how fast are your crown preps, Richard? What,
Oh, I don't prep crowns. I haven't prepped crowns
all right.
since
Okay.
since
Well,
because like
I would say most
like
dentists,
how fast was a full mouth of extractions on a slightly perio involved patient is like 5 minutes. You know,
right,
like,
right. Well, all I would say is like, I can prep a molar tooth in 5 minutes, 7 minutes. A number 19, everything's ideal. I can prep that for a crown in 5 to 7 minutes, because I do it all the time, right? Scaling root planning is no different. But if I was billing by the hour, I may not be incentivized to go as fast.
what's that principle that like the task will end up taking as long as you have to do the task?
Right. But if I'm paid for the procedure, I'm incentivized to finish as fast as possible. And then some people will say, well, I know dentists that block out for their hygienist an hour per quad. So you're telling me it takes 4 hours to do
4 quads of SRP.
To do four, so that's a 4-hour cleaning, is what you're telling me. And I take issue with half that time. If you tell me it's 30 minutes a quad, I would say you spend. Yeah, I would just say do it yourself. If you're the dentist, I would gauge that yourself. See how long you feel like it actually takes, and not take someone else's word for it all the time.
Well, and here's the other equivalent of this. When I was a military dentist, active duty Army, coming out of dental school, Army dentistry is the largest corporate dentistry in the nation.
Yeah.
Over 1,000 dentists, and maybe they've been surpassed now by someone else.
Okay.
But so they get new grads from every dental school, and they kind of assume that when you graduate from dental school, you're a danger to society because the training is uneven and the results are uneven, and that you have no clue if that was the top of the class or the bottom of the class, barely graduated.
Right.
So when you start off your first 6 months, 12 months, they don't load your schedule up. Like you kind of still have dental school, depending on which clinic you're in. Every clinic's different, but a lot of times they're kind of like letting you ease into it. And then eventually, you're not paid on production. You're paid the same salary no matter what.
Yeah.
You've got government employees as assistants and hygienists, and they're not paid on production. And so as a military doc, you can kind of get into this, like, you got time. You got time to do the fillings. You got time to do the crowns. There's no rush. Versus someone who's been in a Medicaid and every day they're quadruple booked for 2 columns. And patients no show, but sometimes they all show up, and you got to get the work done. Yeah. And these people don't want to wait, and you don't want to be behind. You learn how to do things quickly and be efficient with every movement of your hand. It's like we just cut. The drill moves as fast as you want it to. Just cut the size of the box and the prep, and move on, and have your F to fill and all of that. So I agree entirely with you, and we don't want to get like burned down by any hygienist podcast. Not that that's ever happened to anyone who's talked about hygiene before publicly.
Somehow all my podcast episodes that I'm on turn to hygiene. People like to talk about, because it's so unique to have a hygienist-less practice. But
right. And shared practices, we think in hygiene days. So like when I ask about a dental practice, I'm like, okay, how many hygiene days? And I know pretty quickly how many active patients that practice actually has. And we like scale, like one of our big things is open capacity. We're a big fan of hiring more hygienists than is your current capacity, so you can continue to grow. So it's like, it's core to our model.
Yeah.
And how we consult, how we grow practices. So it's just fascinating you realize
it's probably a better model. I mean, I think if you took the most lucrative hygienistless practice with the most lucrative hygiene run practice, I think the hygiene one would win. I do think that. When I was first to the company, I was like, this is the best. This is the best model ever. And I thought I was had tunnel vision about what's the best. And I just think it just depends. But there's a lot of headaches that I don't have. I breezed through COVID. Didn't affect me at all. I didn't have a problem. But if you had 3 hygienists, they all quit, and that represents 30 to 40% of your income. I don't know what you did, dude. I think you started picking
Right.
up. You picked up a Cavitron. You picked up an ultrasonic, and you're the hygienist now.
Well, and that's why I'm saying there's limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And this episode right here is smashing a limiting belief of I have to have a hygienist to run a successful, profitable practice. And the answer is no, actually, there's a way to do this. If crap hit the fan and you didn't have hygienists
Yeah.
and you couldn't find new ones, or they were too expensive, there are successful dentists all over the nation who have done that. So thank you for letting me dig in on this, because
Yeah,
I know,
of
like you
course.
said, everything ends up turning into hygiene because you're willing to talk about it, and
Yeah.
maybe not a lot of people are.
Yeah. Let me just say, I love hygienists. Just in case they're listening.
Hygienists are amazing.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
They're great. Love them. And in no way, and like I said, I would hire a hygienist tomorrow if I felt like I had one that was a good fit, came in, could work fast, could keep up with our pace, and do that. But I am not in an abundance market for a hygienist, but I would hire one tomorrow. I would love it.
Well, and hygienists love you, Brady. I just want you to know. I'm
Most
representing
of them.
all
I think there's like
hygienists
100 that don't.
that don't.
And
They're very vocal.
They're very vocal. It's like 100 that don't, and then all the rest of them do.
Well, especially now that you're hilarious online, I think
They're nicer to me. They're nicer to me, but they still remember things from a long time ago.
They drag up old episodes, and yeah, that got nasty. So transitioning now, I mean, we've been talking for 42 minutes. Like normally this is where I'd cut people off and say, we need to do a whole nother episode, which we might, because I think social media plus charitable dentistry and incorporating both of those things into your practice and taking those things very seriously, you know what? Screw it. I think that's a separate episode. Like yeah, no, I think we need to have you back. Especially because I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the upcoming things for you, which is in
big things.
In May, right? Is kind of when April and May things are getting big.
It's starting actually now. I've been doing a comedy tour for the last 2 months. Kind of more of a light local area, but we've sold out the last 6 shows. So I do stand-up comedy, a little bit of musical comedy as well. Play guitar and I sing and I tell jokes, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. And I travel with another dentist named Burt Walpack out of Eugene, and he's a stand-up comedian as well. He's a dentist out of Eugene. Burt Walpack's not his real name. His real name is Seth Holland. He goes by Burt Walpack because he didn't want patients to find out who he was, and so he goes by. He's super funny, and he opens for me, travels with me most of my gigs, and he's great. And we are taking our tour all over the place. And you can see the full list of dates at drbradysmith.com. It's drbradysmith.com. And it has all my dates. And you can buy tickets straight there off the website, too, if I'm coming to a city near you. It's probably the best team building exercise you could ever do with your office.
How much of the show is dental related? That's what I need to know.
At these shows, I would say 80%. Okay. But it's done in a way that's very enjoyable for My favorite comment is like some hygienist brings her husband, and her husband's like, "I thought this was gonna suck." It's like a dental comedy show. No, thank you. But it's actually very enjoyable for any non-dental people as well. So I'm in Enumclaw this weekend, and Bellingham the next weekend, and then the big tour starts April 17th. We're kicking it off in Sacramento, California, and these are big theater shows. We're in really nice theaters. So we're going to be at the Crest Theater in Sacramento, then the Herberger Theater in Phoenix the very next day. And then we're hitting the Orleans in Las Vegas on May 1st. We got a date in Long Beach at a really cool theater in Long Beach, California. And then we're hitting Salt Lake City, Boise, Portland, Seattle. And then after this summer kind of settles, we're going to be hitting Midwest, East Coast, and taking our show on the road. So you can actually go on my email list and subscribe to my email list and give me your city and state where you live. And that tells us where people want to see us. So we have a Texas run in July. It's going to be the Dallas, San Antonio, Austin run, I think. But yeah, we're going on tour, man. It's going to be awesome. So much fun.
Well, and I'll tell people, if you want a taste of what Dr. Brady Smith is like on stage, to follow you on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle?
Dr. Brady Smith. on Instagram and
Dr. Brady
TikTok.
Smith.
We're on there. Yeah, and there's
Which one are you bigger on? I'm now off TikTok completely.
Oh,
When it
okay.
started bringing on like the ads and stuff like that, I abandoned platform. But where do you have
You
the
know
most
what's
traction these
weird
days?
is I think my best engagement is Instagram, but I have more followers on TikTok, like 500
Okay.
something thousand. I have over 500,000 on TikTok, but my engagement seems better on Instagram, where I have like 200,000 followers.
But I think it's more targeted. I think you have more like dentists and hygienists and assistants, like people who get our
yeah,
world. Um,
yeah.
and like I'll say the other day, I found one of your reels talking about I guess we can't share the full reel here. You accidentally called a patient's tooth something in Spanish that you'll have to go watch the reel. That you have a big molar was what you meant to say in Spanish, and something else came out. And I showed this to my wife, and she's doubled over. Like
Yeah,
we
no,
died.
that's
It
a
was
true
3
story.
a.m.
Yeah.
We were awake with our 2-year-old. It was 3 a.m. and we watched this reel, and we just lose it, like about to pee our
Listen, it's a
pants.
medical
So
term. It's not a slur. It's not a derogatory term. I told the patient they have a big vagina instead of a big molar, and I mixed up some words, and my wires got crossed, and it was a very awkward moment for me. And we all have that, right?
yeah,
Who hasn't called a
right.
molar
Who hasn't
a
accidentally
big
called a
vagina?
patient's molar a big vagina? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
In Spanish.
that's every day. So,
That's every day.
dude, speaking Spanish, I don't know. Do you speak Spanish a lot? I know you do.
I do speak Spanish, and my dental Spanish is atrocious.
My energy just, if I speak Spanish for like 2 or 3 hours during the day, which happens sometimes on my shifts, I'll speak Spanish for like a couple hours, and it's just like I feel like instead of a 3 hour shift, I just did like a 12 hour shift. It zaps my brain, and I literally just feel like if I speak Spanish for so long, like I just can't. My brain just gets
Think the
crazy.
same way
So
anymore.
it's like it makes sense that like no, I totally mess up words.
I feel like it's like you've like backloaded Windows onto a Mac and it's like not running quite right.
Yeah.
You know, you've like hacked it. You've got a Hackintosh.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, well, and I'll say on my Spanish, I learned missionary Spanish in East LA is the
Okay.
Spanish I learned. And, so I don't know any of the dental terms. So I can like describe, I'm like, I don't even know the word for root canal. I'm like, es cuando saca el nervio y lo limpiamos de adentro y lo sellamos después.
Una
And I'm like,
endodoncia.
endodoncia. And
But I don't know
just
that they even
forget
know
every
that
single
word.
time.
Most people don't even know that. I just say in Inglés lo llamamos root canal.
Root canal.
And they're like, oh yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's
That's what I
una
need to do
endodoncia.
instead of endodoncia.
That's-
Yeah, well, and I didn't want to learn the dental terminology that dentists use because I'm sure no patients
Yeah.
know those words.
Yeah.
I wanted to know like the patient slang word for all the things. And I never
Filling
learned
a crown and all this stuff. Yeah. A root canal.
Yeah, exactly.
All this stuff.
Placas for dentures and
Yeah.
all that.
Una
So,
placa.
well, let's get you back. This was a blast.
Thank you so
and
much,
I think
man.
this whole conversation around social media and dentistry, and then charitable dentistry, and the economics of both of those. I mean, the impact those have on your practice is real and tangible.
Yeah.
And your thoughts around it, you know, especially when it came to like overdentures and all in four, I'm like, oh, I could never give away that kind of dentistry. It's so stressful anyways. And then to like the liability and giving it away for free. But you know, there's a whole spectrum of how you can do charitable dentistry. And you've shifted my thoughts around like, no, maybe you can give back and there's a return and there's a flywheel and it just feels good. And
It all revolves around doing what fulfills you, you know, if charity doesn't fulfill you in the first place, it's a bad idea to do it at all. You know, but there are a lot of people who like feel like I want to help people. I love the feeling of helping someone who can't help themselves and being that person and providing that for them. So yeah, I think between the social media and the charity, there's a lot that I think a lot of dentists can benefit from, for sure. So I'm happy to come back anytime you'll have me, I'll come back.
Thank you. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you, Dr. Brady Smith, for coming on Shared Practices. And we'll see you back soon, man.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you next time on the Shared Practices podcast.